It is Friday, February 4th. Let's talk PlayStation. Hello, everyone. Welcome back. Yet again, another ridiculous week of gaming news and so much happening. It's overwhelming because it's only February. So much has already happened. But with that, let's start with our PS Plus reminder. The February games are now live, so you can go grab UFC, Tiny Tina, Planet Coaster if you want to go do that. I know it's a lackluster month, and, well, more so for PlayStation Now, so we got the lineup there for February as well, and that's where we knew about GTA Vice City. That's confirmed. Going to be available until May 2nd. Also, we have Little Big Workshop, Through the Darkest of Times, and Death Squared. So really, PS Now is just limping along at this point. Again, we're waiting for the service revamp, which sometime in spring. So right around the corner, basically. Anyway, moving on to our first news story. Discord functionality is finally rolling out, where you can't really do too much. It's just a simple connection with PSN where you can display a PS4, PS5 game to your friends on Discord, which is what we saw that prior, or at least we had heard about this from the source code that was leaked in that beta version of Discord. So this is now official. It's rolling out globally, so most people should have access to this, and that's all we have so far. It does sound like, based on the blog post on Discord site, that there is more functionality coming at some point, which I would hope, because, I mean, really, displaying, a game you're playing is, it would have been cooler to have, maybe a full-blown application on PS5, which perhaps that is still on the way, but for right now, the only thing we do have is a very simple connection and showcasing what game you're playing. So if you actively use Discord, then at the very least, you can go ahead and do that now. Next up, Sony recently put out the details for MLB The Show 22 this year, launching April 5th, and this will be the first year that the game is now launching on PS4, 5, Xbox One, Series S, X, and also Nintendo Switch. So this year is getting a Switch release and full cross-play, full cross-progression. That's actually really cool to see. We also saw the cover athlete, Shohei Ohtani, so that's also awesome. And we did also get confirmation that the game will launch day and date on Game Pass again this year, so it seems clear that Microsoft probably secured some sort of multi-year agreement here. And it kind of goes back to what we said last year. It's the same thing, really, where we know that Sony was okay with shipping it everywhere. That was the stipulation, re-signing with the MLB Association. Sony wants to be the ones to make the game, and that way they can sell it everywhere and, at the very least, collect that paycheck. So they were fine with that. San Diego studio makes an excellent baseball game, so everybody wins in this scenario. But they probably were, less stoked about the idea of not having much leverage when it came to the game shipping on a competing subscription-based model, which, there's so much talk about how that's doing versus Sony not doing it, right? So the optics just don't look very good here for a franchise that historically has been exclusive to PlayStation. So I'm sure they're not really happy about this again, and probably going to happen for the foreseeable future, depending on how long the agreement was that Microsoft was able to secure. But again, Sony at least collects the paycheck on everything. I'm sure they can see some, engagement and numbers from Game Pass, and that's going to be certainly interesting from their point of view to at least come to decisions on how they're going to approach their models moving forward. Now, let's talk about last Wednesday's State of Play for Gran Turismo 7, where we got over 30 minutes of gameplay. And this was truly a deep dive on this game, which we needed, but we saw so many modes, a lot of gameplay, of course, all the features. I mean, this was high quality 4K 60 FPS footage, so if you did watch the live stream, make sure you go back and watch the video on demand. But I mean, this game looks immaculate. Yeah, this State of Play covered a lot of things. So for example, when the game actually starts up, so when you first get into it, you're going to be playing this music rally style arcade mode, where it's like this race where as you're going through it, tunes will play reaching each checkpoint. And I guess this is for new players, where you'll have the chance to adjust your steering and your driving presets. There's the GT Cafe. This is a collection of activities to complete for new cars. Then there's the License Center. That's where there's various driving tests that can be quite challenging. Of course, there's a deep catalog of parts that you can buy to tune your car. Then there's also the Scapes feature. That's where you can take pictures of your car placed in different, settings, and it's kind of like a hyper crazy photo mode, I guess would be the best way to put it. They call it an avant-garde feature because it's just so specific, but there's that, and then there's an immense focus on car culture in general. So there's this museum feature having deep insights into the history of each car and the lineage of the automakers. It looks like there is a ridiculous amount of stuff here to comb over. And that fits probably more broadly speaking about the game in general, where you've got over 400 cars, 34 locations, dynamic weather. You've got these rain mechanics and puddles that dry at different points as time progresses. The day-night cycle, which that and the rain mechanics, they don't apply to all tracks, only certain ones, but that is highly unique and specific, where, Kazunori Yamauchi's really, talking at length about how that works. Of course, you've also got these mechanics for wind resistance, the slipstream of each car. It's crazy. There's so much going on in this game versus say what we saw in the same time frame for GT Sport, because there is a content roadmap, year 2, 3, 4. So Sport obviously got better over time, but it seems like GT7 right now is starting off much better. That, and also the game seems a lot more accessible, which I'm pleased to see, because that's the weird thing for me. Like, I actually really love cars. It's kind of a side hobby for me as well. So this was fun to watch, seeing how beautiful the game looked, seeing all the cars and the parts and what you can do. But I've never been able to click with this franchise because it doesn't play more on the arcadey side of things. I always found it, hard to control. That's where it's always been a bit weird for me, and that's why I want to try maybe getting a racing wheel or something. But if it is, more accessible, maybe I'll give it a shot. And that seems to be the case for a lot of people, where because of the way the game controls, it truly is a driving simulator. Some people start playing this game, then they go, they're able to transfer what they learn in the game to a real life racetrack. Like, that's really a thing if people don't know. But with that said, it seems like at least across the Gran Turismo community and some fans, there's still some reservations, like the always online connection for single player content. Obviously that is a huge bummer, and I'm not a fan of that whatsoever. But there's that. There was no mention of the AI difficulty, or if it's been ramped up or improved from Sport. I guess that was a huge problem. Also, nothing about VR, but I would imagine they're saving that for PlayStation VR 2's formal reveal, because, again, a content roadmap, surely that's going to come at some point, and that would be a really engaging way to play the game, probably. But yeah, it's looking really good, and probably that's what a lot of people are thinking after this state of play, if I would venture a guess. But either way, I mean, this is a huge franchise for PlayStation, so this one could really deliver in a big way that we haven't seen in a long time for Gran Turismo. Now, another high-profile game that we saw a deep dive for is Ghostwire Tokyo, the PS5 timed exclusive from Tango Gameworks. This one didn't see a state of play, but more so just an official gameplay presentation that was live streamed yesterday. Or I believe it was a YouTube premiere, not to be a stickler, but that's what that was, which we saw maybe like 9-10 minutes of gameplay, and that's where we got an explanation on, what's going on in the story. You just wake up, obviously everybody in Tokyo's gone, you're trying to figure it out, you've got this spirit inside of you which grants you all these crazy combat abilities, which I am loving the way this game looks. I truly am digging the paranormal aspect of it, the ambiance, the ghoulish looking dystopian but real life looking Tokyo. This game I am really excited for. My only issue is that in this footage in particular, it looks the enemies don't seem to really do much. So I don't know if they just presented it that way to, showcase all the visual effects they have going on for how you can actually, take care of enemies. That certainly looked fun. That alongside the traversal aspects of the game, but yeah, all that looked good. The enemies don't really, they seem like they're sponges that are just, standing around waiting to be beaten up. Like, they don't seem very threatening. Hopefully that's not going to be... It might be a problem where the game doesn't showcase gameplay all that well. Perhaps it's a lot more difficult if they do get a hold of you or touch you or deal damage. I don't really know. That's my one concern. But otherwise, we did see a gameplay deep dive of that in particular. And also the release date that we saw somewhat leak early, March 24th, 25th. It is confirmed March 25th. So that was a weird one where there were two different accidental PS Store listings pop up where the 24th and the 25th came up. It is the 25th. That falls on a Friday, so that's where it is confirmed. So that's good, though. Despite my reservations, I'm still completely signed up. The game looks really cool, and surely there's a reason why Sony thought it looked interesting enough to lock down as a one-year timed exclusive. Next up, it's time for everyone's favorite news story that only comes up every 3 months, and I'm of course talking about Sony financials. Yes, we finally have our Sony Q3 2021 financial report. This would be covering October to December of last year, and during that quarter, we now know that PS5, Sony shipped 3.9 million PS5s during that quarter, for an updated worldwide total of 17.3 million PS5s sold worldwide. Which, it's not a bad number, but there is a problem here. So, yeah, the supply constraints are really starting to hit Sony in a big way. Not only is this a lot lower than my prediction of 20 million, which, bear in mind, I gave that prediction at the start of 2020, which would have been really hard to gauge exactly just how many, they secured for manufacturing, because that's the big problem here, of course. But Sony is now falling behind the PS4's rate of sale. If you remember, during the last quarter, PS5 was about 400,000 units behind PS4, which wasn't a ton, but enough where it was like, okay, now PS5 is starting to fall behind, but, let's see how this, holiday quarter goes. Maybe they have a lot more shipments coming in. Well, not really the case, because that gap is widening. So, launch-aligned, PS4 was at 18.5 million consoles sold. Now, depending on where you saw this, some places are reporting this wrong. They're saying 20.2 million. I double-checked just to be sure. 20.2 was March 2015 for PS4. So they're 3 months ahead. Really, it's 18.5 million. So not as much of a difference, but still, the gap is widening. Sony cannot make as many of these things versus PS4. And I would probably venture a guess and say they could do a lot better if they were able to make more. So 17.3 is not a bad number by any stretch, but just in the context of not being able to make enough of them, and them constantly selling out no matter where you look, that's where it's a problem. Now, we also saw that for PS Plus subscribers, they reached a new total here, or a new record rather, 48 million subscribers. And across the board, we don't have to go over numbers too much here, but this is another very profitable, record-breaking quarter for Sony when it came to not only the entire division, but PlayStation in general. So it's another healthy, quarter for the company, but yeah, PS5 supply is certainly a problem right now. Probably the more interesting thing about this report was during the earnings call, Sony's CFO Hiroki Totoki answered a few questions, one of them being about the Activision Blizzard acquisition. So not really much of a... it's kind of the response you would expect. So he was quoted saying, "We're not in a position to make any comments, so it is difficult for us to say anything, but they have announced the intention to purchase, but that has not been completed yet. And what kind of business model change will take place is something we don't have a clear picture of yet. So for the competitor's large-scale M&A, we do not want to speculate. We rather want to pursue and execute our strategy at a right timing, and we want to focus on that. That's it." So, as expected, a pretty canned response, which was probably prepared ahead of time because they knew it was going to come up. It's not like they're going to outline right now exactly how they're feeling, how they're going to approach it, this, that, and the other. They did also comment on more merger and acquisition, how they're going to approach it moving forward, and they did emphasize that it's not necessarily about the size of the investment, but rather any sort of investment is possible, just that they analyze if there's, potential upside, and this is where we can, also talk about the major news that was announced on Monday, Sony acquiring Bungie, right? So that was a major deal. We already did a separate conversation covering that news story, so by all means, if you haven't seen it just yet, you can go watch my initial thoughts and take and all the details about that particular deal, but largely that deal is about the talent associated with Bungie, because Sony outlined almost immediately, right? We didn't have to wait for any sort of follow-up Q&A or anything. It was in the initial blog post, press release, the follow-up conversation on GamesIndustry.biz. Sony confirmed this immediately. They are independent. They will stay independent. They'll publish independently. Destiny 2 is not going anywhere. Any further IP coming out of Bungie will probably be multi-platform. PlayStation outlined that right away. That's what they're doing. Why they acquired Bungie was to help with, they want their expertise and talent associated with live service-based games. That's where we can go into our next news story about another thing mentioned during the earnings call, which is that Sony plans on releasing 10 live service-based games by March 2026. So basically a content and production roadmap of, here's all the titles that we have planned. And this isn't something where we needed this, earnings call to come up to be reminded of this. So it made a lot of headlines, but if you've been following LTPS for a while, you know that we have a ton of multiplayer projects coming. So if we want to try and do a preliminary decoding of what 10 games we should be expecting in the next, 4 years, I mean, we've got, I guess The Last of Us Factions could probably be considered one of them. That's probably going to be live service based of some kind. Insomniac's multiplayer game. There's London Studios multiplayer game. Deviation might be live service focused. There's also Firewalk could possibly be one. We know Haven Studios is very likely to be one. Perhaps Guerrilla Games' second project. Keep in mind that's been in the oven for a bit. That could have been something where it's a simple, first-person shooter with a basic multiplayer mode, or perhaps it is, completely live service focused. But there's that. One could argue that, well, now Bungie's new IP is probably going to be in there. Gran Turismo 7 could be considered as live service because we just mentioned that's got a content roadmap. The Twisted Metal reboot. We've also got Ghost of Tsushima Legends, which that's already out, but they're still hiring for multiplayer. So, that could be something where we see it in the sequel again as a, standalone spin-off on PS4, 5, mobile, PC, right? We've got a lot of things going on, and these are all growth vectors for PlayStation where, just one or two of these games has to really land and resonate with an audience to make a ridiculous ton of money. That's why publishers have been chasing, live service for a while, because if a game hits, it does really well. And to reiterate to people, this is a growth vector for Sony. I don't know why people don't seem to understand this, but Sony is growing. They want to grow. They're a company. Same with Microsoft. It doesn't mean less single-player games. I can guarantee you Sony is well aware of what made them a ridiculous ton of money during the PS4 lifecycle. They're not going to walk away from that. It's just a matter of doing that alongside mobile, PC, now some, playfully doing multi-platform stuff, doing, the PC back catalog, live service. And this is really putting into context the Bungie acquisition, because now that the dust is settling, I'm still seeing a lot of people, wonder but why Bungie, 3.6 million, was that really worth it if they're still multi-platform? But it's like we discussed in the Monday video. With Sony, the obvious suspects were already gone. Housemarque, Bluepoint, they got them. Okay, what's the formula for how Sony does acquisitions? Well, they go for talent, not IP. They don't have an IP problem. Now, I understand that at this point, they might be in an awkward position, say 5-6 years, if Microsoft keeps picking up more publishers, then yeah, they might have to start picking up publishers themselves and really expelling a lot of, debt and cash to pick up a publisher and secure some IP, for the long term. But besides the point, at least what we've seen before, they go for talent and not IP. Sony does not have an IP problem right now. They've always had successful IP. Bungie is very much a $3.6 billion investment in talent, and that talent is live service games. They have a ton of live service games in development, so put two and two together, especially because it seems like that was Bungie's stipulation. Hey, okay, let's make a deal, but we still want to be independent and publish everywhere. Sony, much like, say, the MLB situation, okay, well, that's still our money anyway. So even if you do make a brand new successful IP that launches on Series S, X, PC, wherever, that's still going to be money in Sony's wallet. And the benefit is they have 800, 900 something staff with an expertise in the genre and those game economies, and apply that to Sony's 10 plus live service games where, again, only one of them has to really land to do good. So that puts it into perspective. That's another news story, is that $1.2 billion of that acquisition was really for deferred payments and employee retention. And that story came out and people were like, oh, that seems a bit strange. But it's like, well, no, because you don't want to pay $3 billion for a company, and some of those senior employees that are shareholders of Bungie, they get a huge payday and they leave. Well, you don't want that. You're acquiring the talent in the first place, so they want employees to stay and keep working to do what they do best. So that is why they picked up Bungie, and whether you think it's worth it or not, I mean, I guess is up for debate. We'll see in 4 years after these games launch, but that is what happened, and that is what Sony's doing. It's all growth, though. It's not less single-player stuff. I'm just fascinated to see Bungie's influence on all these games that we're expecting, because I don't really care for live service games either. I really don't. But it's not like they can't make a compelling product that I might try for 5-10 minutes and maybe it'll hook me. It's the same thing with any other video game. I just really want to see, how it all pans out for them, because Bungie certainly did catch a lot of people off guard, but if it works out, then it's going to be, then Sony made a good move. Now, this is a good segue to our next story, which, unsurprisingly, more merger and acquisition is coming. I think we all know that's bound to happen very soon, probably. Who knows where it's going to come from, but Geoff Keighly's recent tweet was picked up by a number of sites. He says, and I quote here, "Have heard from multiple people, as you might suspect. There are a few other big video game deals in the final stages of negotiations. It's going to be an interesting year." This is probably just a good opportunity to remind people that as of right now, it's very clear that nobody truly knows exactly what's going to happen. We've covered rumors for a few years when it came to acquisitions. Obviously, it's really starting to heat up now, so it's not like more aren't coming. But when it comes to seeing certain Twitter accounts say this or certain websites post this and they start naming names, I think it's fair to say we should stop putting any stock into any of those rumors, because nobody saw really any of these coming. Almost every acquisition so far, unless it was like an obvious one where it's like, Sony should acquire Bluepoint. Like, okay, well, I've been saying that for a long time. I'm not some sort of genie. I didn't have background info about that. So unless it's something obvious, it seems abundantly clear that nobody really knows anything. And when you really think about it, why would that information ever get out? There's a very small select few amount of people that are in those negotiations when they happen. Most employees at the seller and the buyer, they don't even know, right? Some high level people still don't even know at those companies. So in terms of rumors and moving forward, let's just be clear about this. Nobody probably knows anything, and we could wake up to a crazy press release that nobody really knew. And that goes for a lot of rumors nowadays, where there's so many random Twitter accounts popping up thinking they know something. So it just gets a little exhausting. But yeah, it does seem obvious that we're getting more acquisitions soon, and that was the only surprising thing on the Sony side of things. The obvious ones were picked up, so I really would like to see where they go. With Bungie now, with having some time to think about that, at least it does still somewhat fit with how they've approached it, because they acquire talent, Bungie's talent, and this is our first example of them picking up a well-known multi-platform, currently a multi-platform studio. Again, there's a working relationship there, but we can't keep selling that for a while, right? Obviously, Sony at some point is going to have to, they might be making some moves that we otherwise wouldn't have seen before. And I've said, like, if they picked up a big publisher, I would be shocked. Nowadays, considering Microsoft has done what they've done, now I would be less shocked. But I can't wait to see what either of these two companies do, because it's really getting into a really murky, crazy territory, and it's not exactly something to be celebrated. I think that should have went without saying, but obviously that's also something where people tend to get a little too worked up when it comes to brand loyalty. You don't necessarily want this much consolidation. In the long term, that could be a slippery slope where it's not that beneficial to the consumer. But we'll see how this plays out. Consolidation season is in full effect. Anyway, this past Monday was the 25th anniversary of Final Fantasy VII launching on the original PlayStation. Square Enix was celebrating with a brand new logo, and it really has been 25 years of that landmark title coming out, and it really was just groundbreaking for its time. It was something truly special. And the one thing we can briefly mention here is that, well, at least hopefully we should be expecting a reveal of FF7 Remake Part 2. I would hope by the end of this year, but probably not. It's looking like that might be more an early 2023 kind of thing, considering that Square has been pretty open about their timeline and how it's slipped for FF15 at least, where we know that game's about half a year behind on development. And that also, if this alleged PS5 exclusive rumor, which we talked about, what was that, last week or 2 weeks ago, that game is supposed to be revealed after the next big reveal for FF15. So if that's coming in the spring, then that means this rumored title, which is not Dragon Quest or Final Fantasy or Kingdom Hearts, it's nothing like that. That game would be revealed after, and I'm guessing that might be a somewhat large title by itself, so that means you might not want to have that and then the FF7 Remake Part 2 reveal, so it seems more likely that that's probably sometime in early, maybe mid-2023. And I would also like to think that we're at a point where there's going to be a faster turnaround for these games. Square's pretty much said that much recently, where they don't want these games locked up in a 5-7 year dev cycle anymore. So at least, at least for the remake, hopefully it's in a better spot where we don't have to wait, 15-20 years for this remake to be complete, because the first game is only Midgar, and like that's a very small part of that game. So my curiosity is how big is part 2, because depending on how much they cover in part 2, that'll dictate how much is in, if there's going to be a part 3, 4, 5, or just 3, 4, you know what I mean? So hopefully we get some sort of a reveal or possibly a teaser by the end of this year or early next year. Now, with all that said, it is time for Let's Talk Plus, the weekly Let's Talk PlayStation giveaway where one of you can win a $10 PSN code. I would like to congratulate this viewer right here. I'll be contacting you very soon via email or Twitter, and if you would like to win a $10 PSN code, it's very easy. Follow the link down below. Supporting this channel a number of ways can gain you an entry, and I'll announce the winner next week because I'm trying to help pay for your games. Those are all the stories that I wanted to talk about with you all from this past week. So like I mentioned earlier, Monday was the major Bungie acquisition, so you can check out the initial details and impressions and a breakdown discussion there. And then also Tuesday was the 2022 PS3 online video. I know a lot of you were waiting for that one and expecting it. It's finally there. We checked out a bunch of games, some recurring ones and also some brand new ones. So a lot of interesting things popped up in that. Go check it out. And then coming up, more videos as always. Nothing's concrete. Honestly, it never is. But that said, that concludes this week's episode of Let's Talk PlayStation. I'm Ryan Benecki. Thank you all so much for talking with me, and I will see you all next Friday.